He made the world dance, but inside he was falling apart. Avicii wasn't just a DJ, he was a musical genius, a global superstar who seemed to have it all. But behind the fame, the tours, and the chart-topping hits was a young man trapped in a cycle of pressure, pain, and silence. This is not just the story of a music icon. It's the dark truth behind his tragic end. Stay with us, because what really happened to Avicii might change how you see the music industry forever.
The detachment of the soul is the final bond before it resets. Wow, that's a really heavy line, right?
It really is. And it comes straight from Avicii's own journal.
Avicii, I mean, a name synonymous with massive global success, stadiums full, charts topped, yet he felt this profound emptiness.
Exactly. And that's really what we want to get into today. We're not just, giving you the quick summary.
Right.
We've looked at articles, biographies, documentaries, really trying to piece together the story of Tim Bergling, the person, understand the forces, the pressures in his life.
And what his story might tell us more broadly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, look, while most of us aren't DJs playing to massive crowds,
Definitely not.
that feeling of pressure, being stretched too thin, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh, for sure. Work deadlines, family stuff, just life,
Right, so this deep dive, it's kind of a stark look at the hidden costs, maybe,
Yeah.
when that pressure just becomes overwhelming.
And why looking after yourself, your well-being, it's not just some optional extra. It's fundamental.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so let's rewind. Where should we start? The beginning.
Makes sense. Tim Bergling, born in Stockholm, 1989.
Youngest of 4 kids, right. And quite a creative family background. His mom was an actress.
Yeah, and L.A. Hanko, a well-known actress, so
Right.
creativity was definitely around.
What about him as a kid, personality-wise?
Well, descriptions say he was actually quite shy, a bit insecure, maybe used humor to cope, like the class clown thing.
I can see that. Sometimes that backfires, though, doesn't it? Leads to feeling a bit isolated.
Apparently, yeah. Though he supposedly opened up more later on. But you do wonder, how that early shyness, maybe that vulnerability played into everything later.
Especially fame.
Especially fame, yeah.
Yeah.
Brutal world sometimes. But music was there early on.
Oh, yeah. Really early. Like 8 years old, apparently messing around with music production stuff.
8? Wow, okay.
Then high school, he meets Philip Eisen. And that seems like a really important connection.
They started making music together.
Yeah, like a proper creative team, skipping class, making beats, and you get the picture. And his parents were okay with this, supportive.
Seems like it, yeah. Which is great, honestly, having that backing for your passion, especially when you're young.
Definitely. Not everyone gets that.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so he's making music, he's got support. Then things start to get more serious.
Right around 18, yeah. Big year. He meets Arash Pornery,
Who becomes his manager, a really key figure in his career.
a very key figure.
Yeah.
Same year, she signs a label deal, and that's when he adopts the name Avicii.
Which has kind of a dark origin story, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Inspired by Avicii, the lowest level of Buddhist hell sort of means without waves or unending suffering.
Interesting choice. Maybe a bit telling in hindsight.
Perhaps. Then 2008, he wins this BBC music production contest. That sounds like a pretty big deal.
Was it? Like in that scene?
Oh yeah, definitely. That wasn't just some small thing. It gave him real industry recognition, a proper platform. Open doors.
Okay, so the launch pad is there, and then the hits started rolling in.
Pretty quickly. Seek Bromance. Then Levels.
Levels. Everyone knew Levels.
Exactly. That track just exploded. It wasn't just a dance hit, it crossed over massively, made him a huge name. First across Europe, then globally.
So these early tracks, they really defined his sound, right? Set the stage for what came next.
Absolutely. They showed he could make these huge anthemic tracks that just connected with millions, built that foundation.
But also, maybe, started building the pressure.
Unknowingly, yeah. I think that's fair to say. Which leads us into that next phase, like 2011 to 2013.
Right, this is when he becomes a proper global superstar.
Peak Avicii era, maybe. Wake me up, hey brother. These massive genre-blurring hits, they were everywhere.
Everywhere. But behind the success, the sold-out shows, a different story was developing.
Yeah, the touring schedule is just insane.
Multiple countries in a day sometimes. How is that even possible?
Barely. And with that relentless pace came, well, the dark side. Worsening anxiety, total exhaustion.
And relying on alcohol, painkillers too.
Yes. Prescription painkillers became part of the mix. It's that awful paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
To achieve this massive success, everything you supposedly dreamed of.
And you feel worse than ever. Why does that happen so often, do you think? Especially music, entertainment?
It's complex, obviously. But I think, when the external validation, the fame, the money, the crowds, becomes the main thing, it doesn't actually feed your soul right.
Right.
And the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Constant travel, no proper sleep, immense pressure to always be on, always deliver. It just grinds you down, physically, mentally.
Plus the environment itself, partying, substances being readily available, maybe you better expect it.
That too. It makes it incredibly hard to step back, set boundaries, prioritize your own basic needs, like rest, connection, feeling okay inside. The rewards are all external.
And it really started to catch up with him physically, didn't it? Early 2012.
Yeah. Acute pancreatitis. That's serious. Inflammation of the pancreas, often linked, as it was here, to heavy drinking.
Incredibly painful, debilitating. He ends up hospitalized, prescribed opioids.
And that starts another dangerous cycle, unfortunately.
But he keeps going, keeps performing even after that.
He does, which is hard to comprehend, really. Then you have that performance at Ultra Music Festival in 2013.
Yes. That caused a stir. The reaction online was pretty negative, wasn't it? Because he debuted a very different country-infused sound.
It was brutal, yeah. A lot of backlash from the EDM purists. And that negativity probably hit him hard, given those underlying insecurities we talked about.
And what's really interesting, or maybe concerning, is how his manager handled it.
Right. Arash Porneri framed it as misunderstood brilliance, like, you guys just don't get it yet.
Which, commercially, maybe worked. The track Wake Me Up became his biggest hit ever. Even Obama mentioned it, apparently.
It did become huge, yeah. But you have to ask, did that spin help him? Did it stop him from maybe processing the criticism or his own feelings about it? Did it just add another layer of disconnect?
Like the machine just keeps going, smoothing over the cracks.
Something like that, the industry machine. Because the health problems continue. Doctors advised him to get his gallbladder removed in 2013.
But he refused, because he didn't want to cancel shows.
That's the story, yeah. Then 2014, his appendix ruptures. Emergency surgery.
Okay, surely that forces a break.
A short one. But apparently he spent most of it in the studio, not exactly resting.
Oh, come on.
And then straight back to touring. It just paints this picture of someone feeling completely trapped, unable to say no.
What drives that, do you think? Fear of losing it all? Letting people down? Management pressure?
Probably all of the above. Fear of disappointing fans, the label wanting the momentum, maybe his own fear of becoming irrelevant if he stepped back.
Especially if you're maybe naturally insecure, seeking validation through your work. Saying no feels impossible.
It really points to a systemic issue, doesn't it? Where the demands just eclipse the person's well-being.
Thankfully, people around him saw it. 2015, his family organized an intervention.
Yeah, which reportedly he was initially angry about, felt blindsided. But eventually he did agree to go to rehab.
A major step. And then in 2016, the big announcement.
Retirement from live shows.
Yeah.
After his final gig in Ibiza. After, 813 shows in 8 years.
Just staggering. 813 shows.
Unbelievable. And his letter to the fans then, it was quite revealing. He talked about loving the music, but the whole environment, the touring life, he called it toxic.
Wow. To use that word publicly, that takes courage.
It really does. A clear sign he knew things had to change drastically for him to survive, basically.
But retiring from touring, that didn't solve everything, did it? The underlying issues were still there.
Sadly, no. He did release new music in 2017, that 6-song EP, meant to be part of a larger album.
But the anxiety, the chronic pain, that continued.
It did. And doctors were giving him stark warnings. You need total sobriety, a really strict diet, or you risk permanent stomach damage.
It's almost heartbreaking to read that he found some peace, some creativity when he was forced to be still, like in the hospital.
Yeah, journaling, reflecting, making music quietly. It really highlights how much the chaos of his touring life was impacting him negatively. He seemed to crave that calm.
Then the documentary, True Stories, came out that same year, 2017.
Which became quite controversial, or at least very revealing.
Because it showed the highs, but also the really raw lows, including those moments where he looks physically unwell in pain.
And people around him are still pushing him to do interviews, make appearances. It's uncomfortable viewing.
Very. And he later said he regretted not standing up for himself more in those situations shown in the film.
That vulnerability, his regret. It speaks volumes, doesn't it? About the power dynamics, the internal conflict he must have felt, passion versus self-preservation.
And how well are artists actually supported when the commercial machine is that powerful?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
So things are still fragile. Then, April 2018, he goes to Oman.
Yeah, with a friend, looking for something different, it seems. Meditation, spiritual healing, some kind of retreat.
But it didn't go as planned. It actually sounds like things took a worrying turn there.
Reports describe him meditating for extremely long periods, barely eating, isolating himself, getting distressed. It sounds intense and quite concerning.
He missed a call with his team. His friend got really worried.
Understandably, the friend ended up contacting Tim's father. It sounds like a desperate search for peace that somehow went terribly wrong.
And then the worst possible news. April 20th, 2018.
Tim was found dead in Muscat, Oman.
His representative confirmed it, asked for privacy. Then, a few days later, the family released a statement hinting at the cause, and later it was confirmed.
Suicide by blood loss, using broken glass from a bottle. Just devastating, utterly tragic.
His poor family. In the midst of that grief, they set up the Tim Bergling Foundation.
Which is an incredible legacy, initially focused on mental health and suicide prevention.
And later they expanded it to include environmental protection too.
Yeah, reflecting maybe a broader sense of well-being, interconnectedness. It's a powerful way to channel their loss.
And the music continued in a way? That posthumous album, Tim, came out in 2019.
With all the profits going to the foundation. A fitting tribute.
Then the biography in 2021, which included those journal entries.
Yeah, the ones we started with. The detachment of the soul. And that line about feeling anxious since he was young. A constant stone in my gut.
So raw. It gives you such a direct window into that long struggle beyond the fame, beyond the music.
Absolutely strips it all back to the human being underneath, grappling with immense pain.
And very recently, end of 2024, another documentary on Netflix, Avicii, I Am Tim.
Right, tracing his whole life.
Yeah.
From childhood to the end. Apparently includes footage showing the loneliness, the anxiety behind the scenes, hotel rooms, travel.
Really hammering home the human cost of that lifestyle, that industry.
His death, it sent shockwaves, didn't it? A really powerful, if tragic, message about the darker side of fame, the pressures in the music world.
Absolutely. It forced conversations that needed to happen.
No.
About mental health, about how artists are treated, about the demands we place on people in the public eye.
Definitely. It feels like his story has had a real impact, prompting some level of reevaluation maybe, a push towards prioritizing well-being more. At least one hopes so.
Yeah, you hope so. So looking back at this whole deep dive, several things really stand out, don't they?
For sure. That stark contrast, first off. Huge outward success, deep inner turmoil.
The sheer intensity of the music industry pressure, it's relentless.
And just the fundamental, non-negotiable importance of mental and physical health. For everyone, not just superstars.
It makes you think, doesn't it? About our own lives, our own workplaces or fields.
Yeah. What are the hidden pressures, the systems that might be grinding people down without us even realizing it?
And what can we actually do, individually, collectively, to build environments that are healthier, more supportive?
Big question. But Avicii's story, as heartbreaking as it is, really serves as this potent reminder,
To look deeper, beyond the surface, beyond achievements.
Exactly. To value what's going on inside. For ourselves, for others, prioritize that inner health above almost everything else.
It's a sobering thought, but a really vital one to take away.